Welcome to Two Woke Bonnets, a podcast where we revisit the classic TV shows of our Gen X childhoods and see how well they hold up today. With your hosts, Carol and Joey.
Hello and welcome to the Prairie. My name is Carol.
My name is Joey.
And we are Two Woke Bonnets. We are rewatching Little House on the Prairie, going through it episode by episode and kind of comparing it to what by today's standards, I suppose, would be wokeness.
Yes.
We are on season 2. Oh my gosh. We
Yay!
have completed season 1 of the show. We will be doing a recap in a future episode, but we just went right on to season 2.
Yes.
Season 2, episode 1. So those of you watching it on Peacock, all of the enumeration should be back to normal now.
Yes. No more switching of episodes. No more adding of pilot episodes. This will be good.
Yes. However, we are going to ramp up the adoration of Charles Ingalls quite a bit here, particularly this season, I think.
Yes.
And so particularly in our first episode here, which is the richest man in Walnut Grove.
So yes, that's correct. So
yeah.
The first season, the first episode of the season, not the movie, was called The Harvest of Friends.
Yeah.
And in that episode, Michael Landon talks about Pa discovers he's one of the richest men in the world because he has so many good friends that stick up for him. And now it carries over, and we have kind of a parallel episode this time with the richest man in Walnut Grove. But we start off with a similar problem.
Yeah. They're in money problems. The Ingalls have, I mean, even if you read the books, the Ingalls never escaped their money problems.
Yeah.
They're in deep to the Mercantile.
Yes. Once again, Pa makes a gamble and it doesn't really pay off.
This isn't really Pa, though. This is Lars. Lars Hansen accepts a contract with no money down.
Because it's a big company, and if you don't accept it with no money down,
they'll go somewhere else.
They'll go somewhere else.
The company, like on the eve of delivery, because Charles is like preparing to drive the delivery to Mankato. The company
final
goes
delivery.
Yeah.
The final delivery.
The final delivery because
delivery. Yeah.
Yeah. The company goes bankrupt. So obviously this was a scam on their part. Because I don't think they would have accepted all of these deliveries and then went bankrupt. They were moving money elsewhere and then declared this company bankrupt. But this just seems like really, really poor business sense from Hansen in particular.
Well, because he says to Charles, well, they didn't pay me, so I can't pay you. So sorry. So sad.
And I'm going to close the mill. And he's very just kind of, oh, well, this didn't work out. Got to close the mill for a while. And this just, I mean, Charles had made plans to pay off the Mercantile at the end of the week. And of course, Harriet, who is her crime, they've ramped up the bitchiness of Harriet Oleson here.
Well, this is the second season. So I think they've kind of figured out which characters people connected with.
Yeah.
And definitely people had a connection to Harriet, to the Olsons. And so they become more centralized characters, and we'll start to see
and the kids become far more antagonistic at school. You get that rivalry ramped up quite a bit here because here Ma and Mrs. Oleson go at it, and Ma's just like, in her
I've had it with you. Yeah,
I've had it with you. We will not, we will no longer be here until we can pay off our bill, which, again, in the very first episode, okay, I'm not blaming Harriet for not immediately granting this brand new farmer credit.
Right.
Here, it seems very petty.
Yes.
It seems incredibly petty, particularly since they have to have given Laura's credit as well. Hansen has to have credit there as well because he's not making any money.
Right.
So they know, the Olsons know what's going on, and this is just Harriet being bitchy for the sake of being bitchy.
Well, for establishing, because there is that competition. There is that competition between
Yeah.
Mary and Nellie
And Nellie.
that they are comparable educationally. Um, Obviously Laura's a lot more handy and helpful than Willie is. And there's just that constant, you know, antagonism of who's the better family and all that kind of stuff. But yes. So yeah, so Ma brings in her eggs. She has 2 dozen, which in this day and age, I'm like, wow, 2 dozen eggs.
Wow,
She's really
that'll
actually
get you quite a
rich.
bit of money there, Ma. And they're double yolks.
Yeah. Well, the next episode is double yolks, not this one.
Oh, it's not oh, I thought it was this one. Okay.
Yeah.
Ma's always bringing in double yolks. What is she feeding those chickens? But anyway, here's where things get fuzzy because the family agrees to pull together to raise the money to pay off the mercantile bill.
Right.
Pa's going to go find work because, he could just do odd jobs until whenever. Laura and Ma are going to plant extra potatoes and, store extra vegetables for the winter. And Mary's going to go full time at the local seamstress and just do her homework after work, apparently.
Yes.
So
Because she's old enough to have a job, but
yeah,
Laura's
she
not.
has a part-time job. Oh, and the seamstress who actually comes back in several episodes begins with a W, and her name is
Mrs.
escaping.
Whipple. Mrs.
Wimple.
Whipple.
Yeah,
She's
she
in
she shows
five
up. She is
episodes.
Yeah,
So
she
yeah.
does not disappear. However, the guy that Charles gets a job with, unblocking his dam, does he show back up?
Hmm.
Okay, I was wondering because I was like, now he really sounds very familiar, and I'm wondering if he at least if he does a Johnny Johnson thing and comes back for one episode.
Yeah. So Baker McKay is the one that he does um the irrigation for.
Yes.
And he's in 3 episodes. So we do have 3 main guests versus like regulars.
Yeah.
I would consider the Olsons regulars. You
Yeah,
know,
and then Mrs. Wimple's like a special guest appearance
yeah, so
type
she's in
thing.
5 total episodes throughout the series. Baker McKay, which is played by Kelly Thornton, he's in 3 episodes. This is the first. And then Queenie Smith is the one who plays Mrs. Whipple. And then Jim Jeter, who plays Hansdorfler, he's the one that has the stalls that can be mucked out. So
Yeah.
he's the
Yeah.
furrier. And I thought, oh well, maybe he's just now and then, but he's actually in 9 episodes.
Yeah. He's in
So all
several.
of the guests are not just, there are no
Not dis
townspeople that
People that
disappear. You
disappear.
cannot check that on this week's bingo
Yeah.
card. By the way,
Yeah.
I'm playing on bingo card 19, which we're
Oh
going to be
man,
putting up.
this one irritated the heck out of me. Because
I actually got a bingo, I think.
the only
The
way I got
it's
a bingo is if I count Laura as when wild animals attack.
No, you
But
can't count that.
the other way was
And the
Pa
other
shirtless. And I'm like, of all of the episodes for Charles Ingalls not to get shirtless, he does
2 of
not take
them,
his
the
damn
next
shirt.
2, he does not take his shirt
Digging
off.
this irrigation ditch, he does not remove his shirt. Oh,
No.
come on, Michael Landon. Come on.
Yeah. So,
But no, I did not get a
yeah.
bingo.
So things get really tough for them. They refuse to go back to the Olsons for anything they don't need. Mrs. Beadle calls Laura aside and says, why did Mary not turn in her last 2 assignments? Or why didn't Laura turn in her
Laura.
last 2 assignments? And Laura has to admit that they've run out of paper. And so Mrs. Beadle says, how about I buy you the paper now and you buy me the chalk later? Because she knows their pride.
Mhm.
She knows they won't accept charity. But she says, hey, I'll do that. So Laura happily,
Because yeah, that makes sense. It's not
that would
they're not
be
accepting
wonderful.
charity.
And so she goes, but she decides she can't go in there. And while they're inside, um, Nellie and Willie start teasing her, and so she runs off because
Yeah.
she can't handle
Saying,
it. They talk about
well,
how badly
they
her
tease her
her
dad.
paw
Yeah.
smells.
They don't tease her. They tease her father, and that's what
Yes,
upsets her more.
yeah. So Laura does cry in this episode.
Yes.
She not only tears up in front of them, but if you were like, I don't know if I can count that, she goes up into the barn and she
And she's full of
cries.
tears. Yeah. Full of tears.
And she like sobbing where her father can hear her. And he tells her that, cleanliness is next to godliness. So he's going to go get closer to God and go wash up. And she needs to go in and help her mom and get her homework done. Because
Yeah.
Mrs. Beadle actually sees him and says, listen, I
And
know
says
what you've got
she
going
thought that
on.
maybe she
Yeah,
had
she thought she
overstepped or
had offended
something.
it. Yeah.
But
So,
he also tells her that people who think other people stink generally have their noses in the air.
yes.
So,
And so this first episode, we have the beginning of
yes.
we have the very first instance of Laura bopping Nellie in the nose.
Yes. So things get physical between Laura and
But
Nellie.
here's the funny thing about that. So, like, when Laura goes back to school, with her tablet and she's gotten her homework done, and she goes into the schoolyard and she puts her books down and everything, and Nellie comes over and says, hey, we should play a game of horsey. Is your dad available? He smells like a horse. And she goes up and bops her in the nose. And Nellie not only falls down, but she has blood running down her face. And Laura does not get in trouble. She
No,
does not get in trouble.
no,
We never see Laura getting in trouble for this. You know, nobody, Mrs. Oleson doesn't say your daughter bopped my daughter. Mrs. Beadle never says that. Miss Beadle never says anything. Laura never gets in trouble for this. We never see Laura get in trouble for this.
no,
So you can't
not
mark
even like
that on
later
your
on
your
talking
bingo
about,
card.
hey,
So sorry.
that's not how we solve problems. You can't solve an issue
No.
by hitting her in the nose every time. Nothing. I mean, you cannot tell me that Nellie Olson did not just run home and tell her mother that Laura Ingalls bloodied her
Yeah.
nose.
Yeah. But what was also funny in this is that at one point we see Reverend Alden comes up to where Pa is digging the ditch.
Yeah.
Pa accidentally throws dirt all over him. And Reverend Alden actually tells Pa that he missed his calling as a preacher.
Yeah.
Which I think is funny because part of the argument that they have in the store. So and we are totally not doing anything in order this episode, but anyway.
It's just a series of the Ingalls being made fun
Interaction.
of by the Olsons,
So
the three of the Olsons, because they're poor. That's basically it until they can pay this off.
So we start off with Ma and Mrs. Oleson, and then when Ma finds out from Pa that the money is not coming in, she does a brave thing and she gets dressed up. She takes Carrie and she goes into town with Pa with the eggs early so that she could start to pay down that bill even further. Because remember, the first time she's in, she's so upset, she ends up not buying anything.
Yeah.
And the second time she goes in and she pays some more eggs. But she knows that she mouthed off to Mrs. Oleson.
Yeah, she knows she's going to have to say she's sorry.
Well,
she knows
she's going to have to
apologize.
admit that they're not going to be able to pay.
Yeah.
And she doesn't make Pa do that. She doesn't make him take care of it. She goes in. But then Mrs. Oleson, rather than acknowledging that they are doing this, just rides it so hard.
Yeah.
That Nels keeps telling her, stop, Harriet, stop. And I consider this Harriet commits a crime. It's not.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's not
this is
that,
above and beyond
like,
rude.
yeah, it's above and beyond. It would be one thing to say, because I don't think the point that she made. So she talks about the fact that, we have to pay for this stuff up front. Nobody's giving us credit for it. The stuff that you got, we paid for months ago.
Yes.
And now we're sitting around and waiting for you to pay it back. And as unkind as it is, because you know the nature of the prairie, it's not untrue.
It's not, yeah, it's not, it's a valid point.
But when Ma comes in to take her druthers, to take it on the chin, because she knows she mouthed off, and now because of this unfortunate situation, they're not able to pay their obligations. And Pa even asks Nels, can we have a little bit of credit going forward? That Mrs. Ingalls has to deal with Harriet going, wait just a minute. Ah, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And she overrides her husband, which we know is not the servant wife way that you're supposed to do things. You have to know that my husband always teases me and calls me a servant wife because he knows that is not how this family works.
So. It is one of the problems I have with this episode, that they're showcasing this so much that Harriet speaks over her husband. But on the Ingalls side, they basically have to beg Pa to help pay down, to let them help pay down the
debt. Yeah. And so we have all of that happening. And then here's the thing that I'm starting to notice about Walnut Grove, if I haven't subconsciously, if I hadn't consciously said it before. When Mary is gone, or when Laura's upset about something, Miss Beadle goes to Pa and says, I don't know what I did to upset Laura. Yeah. When Nels knows that his wife went off on everybody, Charles makes a point of saying, Nels, have a good day. We're leaving as long as that woman's here. Reverend Alden comes out and says, Nels wants to make sure you're not mad at him, to Pa. It's like, why doesn't everybody this is the whole premise around sitcoms though, right? Like,
yeah, you don't.
Three's Company, the joke was always, there was a misunderstanding. And that's always, like, if you just straightened out the misunderstanding, there'd be no sitcom. But here's the situation here in Walnut Grove, is nobody speaks to each other directly very much. However,
this episode does Nels dirty, though. He is just shown as so weak. He can't even go talk to Charles on his own. He's got to go.
Well, he can't leave the store. Yeah, whatever.
And here also we get the Charles, you missed your calling. We will find here, whenever Reverend Alden is missing, it's usually Charles now. That will be the
preacher.
The preacher.
Well, and it's like Charles is now the engineer because he figures out how to fix McKay's irrigation problems without him having to wait until the new year and build a whole new irrigation. We have a little bit of ethnic stereotype with McKay because he's always got a jug of cider with him. Yeah, and it's kind of that drinking Irishman. But I didn't mark it on my card.
I don't think I did either.
But it didn't solve anything for me. So it wasn't as hard, but it was a little more subtle. But he's an engineer. He's a preacher. He's the one that says that education, is more about the learning in the next episode. Yeah. There's a lot of Pa doing this. And there's also, but then we see Ma out in the field by herself with Carrie. Carrie's carrying potatoes, and Carrie dumps potatoes in there. At first I was laughing because I was wondering if Carrie was taking all the potatoes that Ma had planted and putting them back in the bucket. But I was like, no, that's not, because she would have cut the potatoes into quarters to plant them. So I was like, okay.
They do play Carrie is very simple in this show.
Yes. So
then also it made me wonder about the time that this episode encompasses, because are those potatoes like grown from start to finish?
Yeah.
So they went from paying, the bill down in 1 week to paying the bill down in an entire harvest.
But I think it was that they planted more potatoes so they could sell more of what they had.
Okay, so like
And
they're
then they could
planting a
plant
secondary
more.
batch for winter and
Yeah,
selling what they have now. So, okay.
exactly.
Because I was
That
like,
made
good
more
Lord,
sense to me.
how long was
Yeah.
Mary out of school?
But it was only a couple weeks that she
Yeah,
was out of
it only seemed
school.
like it was supposed to be like, an additional 2 to 3 weeks or something, and then
Yeah,
they would pay it off. So,
right. So, but they get it done.
yeah.
And we do have a little part of Rose and Mary because she does such a great job for Miss Whipple. And then
Yeah,
Miss Whipple's like, "Dear, go home,
I
go
marked
home."
it.
And she stands there and she's kind of like, um, Miss Whipple, Mrs. Whipple, Mrs. Whipple. And she's like, "Don't squeeze the Sherman, dear." Sorry, old timers will appreciate that joke. But yeah, she's like, "Mrs. Whipple, it's Friday."
You're
And I
supposed to
think
pay me?
usually on Friday. And so it was
Oh,
interesting
Daddy, oh,
because
Daddy.
she said to Laura that it was at least $1. She was hoping for at least $1, maybe
Hmm.
even $2, and she ends up getting $1.70. But
Yeah,
I do think there's a good moment here because Laura feels bad that she's not bringing any cash money in. Although they are doing with the potatoes, but it's not the same. It's not like her
yeah,
doing
it's
it all
not.
by herself.
Yeah,
She's kind of making up the slack by doing the chores. She's doing other things. And
she's
really
getting
we
married
see
for
Ma and
homework.
Carrie do that.
Yeah.
And Mary says to her, "No, no, you are actually
Yeah,
if
it's
I
kind of
couldn't
half
do what
yours
I'm
because
doing if you weren't doing," and it was half yours. Yeah. But of course Laura has to push it just a little bit, right?
can I
Well, can
give
I
him
put
the
half the
money?
money? Can I put half the money in? So, yeah. So they get through it all. Ma's standing there. Ma never gets her due.
No.
We see Pa get the money. We see Mary
Pa's the
get
one
the
who pays
money.
it off.
The
There's no, nah.
Ma's been selling the eggs all along, dang it. And then
And she
they do have
obviously
the
sold
scene
additional vegetables.
with the berries where they're down to nothing. They're out of
Yeah,
tea, they're out of coffee, they're out of
they're out of
sugar,
sugar.
they're out of everything. Um and but they finally get and Ma's standing there in the field. Sorry, I keep talking about this. And Pa goes up to her and he does say a very romantic line where she's like, "I must look a sight." And he's like, "You sure do. Your hair's askew, you're sweaty, you're a hot mess, and you're still the prettiest girl in all the town. And my only regret in life is that I've already married you, so I can't ask you to marry me again." And then they make out in the field.
Yeah,
Yay! So
yeah.
that
It's
is I feel like that is also a 1970s. There were
But
several
again,
1970s woke moments. This is one of my
yes,
favorite in this episode
yeah.
because I feel like there's a lot of times in this episode where you will hear Pa say, "I love you" to the girls, to Caroline. And I don't think that that was a common enough thing when we were growing up. You didn't always
No,
hear the men saying, "I love you."
yeah.
And
You heard it from the female characters all the time, but not the male characters.
no, I mean, listen, Han Solo said ditto. He didn't say
He,
"I love you." He said a ditto.
he said, "I
So
know."
I feel like this was a good moment of that. But anyway, so
But
we never get to,
it's also the juxtaposition of their marriage against the Olsons' marriage, which just seems to be very bitter and argumentative.
yeah, we have not seen Nels and Mrs. Olson say "I love you" that much. The only scene would be
Yeah.
family quarrel when they resolved, and even then it
Yeah.
was not that way. So
Yeah.
so anyway, Pa's
That's the
counting the
episode. They
money.
go, yeah, they
Pa's
go
counting the
pay.
money.
Oh, yeah.
They realize um that
They have
they
extra.
have enough plus extra. And but Pa's sitting there in his pink and white striped shirt with dirt on it, and he tells everybody to go put their fancy clothes on, put their Sunday clothes on, and he's going to go get closer to God again and go take another bath. Why is he getting dirty in his pink white striped shirt? That
I
should
don't
be a
know. That's a
fancy
good
shirt, but
shirt.
I don't know. So they
Seriously.
all line up And now this is a moment that Nels does well, right? Because they all go in and they said they're here to pay the bill. And he says, wait, I'm going to have my wife handle that.
Yes.
And they come in and they pay. And she's like, oh, I didn't expect you to pay it so soon. And I hope, Mary, you didn't get behind too far in your schooling because she's got to think of something,
Yeah,
something to
she's
be
got to needle
negative
them
about.
somehow.
And you know, there they are. They pay their money up front. They get sugar, they get tablets. And
They get
I
chalk.
did not notice that the first time, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, Laura
Laura
gets the chalk.
immediately says, I need some chalk because she's going to pay back her debts, which
Yep.
I thought was a nice touch. I thought that was a nice touch.
And
So,
Pa
so
says at this point, Pa says it's cash on the barrel from here on out. He will ignore that very, very quickly.
but it was a good thought. It was
It's a
a
good
good
thought.
thought. And I think that in the future, when they go on credit, it's a little more thoughtful before they do that. So anyway, so that was it. This
We need a new
episode,
square. We need a new square on the bingo card that says someone says the title of the episode because Nell says it at the very end of this episode. It's like, well, Charles, I think you may be the richest man in Walnut Grove.
yes, I agree. Okay, we'll add that. So yeah, so this was it. Directed by Michael Landon.
Of course.
And I think that's why you get a little bit more of the 70s emotional aspects of it in there. But as we started to talk about a little bit, we did have 3 guests. Again, not one and done. So if your bingo card says villager townsperson disappears, you cannot click it for this one.
That's not. Yeah.
So let's talk about each of them for a little bit. I've talked about Mrs. Whipple before, but just a reminder, she's in 5 episodes. She ended up passing away in 1978. Her name was Queenie Smith. She was the one who dated Cary Grant, if you remember from season 1. I read more about her bio this time. She was actually, at the age of 13, she was one of the top dancers, ballet dancers for the Metropolitan Opera.
Oh, wow.
At 5'1". She also taught professional children actors at the professional acting schools. So some of those kids that she was on the Prairie with, she also taught them their classes when
while
they were
on set.
So that's kind of interesting. She does have about 3 more episodes. She'll appear one more time this season, and then I think there's 1 or 2 more after that. Hans Dorfler, he was the one that they mucked out the skulls. So he was James Jeter, or sometimes he's credited as Jim Jeter. He had 92 credits. He went on to act for 2000 through 2007. He actually appeared in an episode of Father Murphy, but not as a long-term character. He was just like a bartender. But he was in both Gunsmoke and Bonanza, so you can count that on your card. He was a Golden Gloves boxer, and he actually went and got his law degree and was a well-known lawyer as well. And he was friends with Paul Newman and Steve McQueen. They became friends early on, and so he was often given jobs because of his networking ability. And that's why he had the 92 credits, but also why he was able to act so long. And then he ended up starting a theater back in Houston, Texas. And he was quite a big Broadway and theater actor, not just a TV actor. Baker McKay, who was Kelly Thorson, he also passed away in 78. So both Queenie and Baker and Kelly passed away the same year. He's in one more episode after this. He has 120 acting credits to his name, and he also was in both Bonanza and Gunsmoke. So you can count Bonanza and Gunsmoke on your thing. So I did get a bingo.
I did not.
So let me tell you the ones that made my bingo, so you can tell me if any of those don't count. And then I'll tell you some of the other ones. So I had Harriet commits a crime.
Mm-hmm.
I had the 2024 unwoke moment because of the way.
For me, it was the constant need to ask Pa permission for every little thing we're doing.
Exactly. Someone does get hurt because Nellie got punched in the nose.
Yep.
Ma and Pa definitely shared multiple knowing looks throughout this episode, and Laura cried up in the barn. So I also had Carrie speak. She spoke right at the beginning about milking the cow.
Milking the cow.
We also had nightcaps. Nellie and Laura do fight this episode. Of course, free space for Jack. We did have Frozen Mary at Mrs. Whipple's, not knowing how to ask for money. They definitely had moments of running uphill and downhill. There were several 1970s woke moments throughout the episode. Mm-hmm. And then I had both guests on Gunsmoke and Bonanza. So I had a pretty full card.
The only additional one I had that you didn't have was lemon verbena because Pa mentions it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, multiple times. Of course, the next episode, do you think we get one lemon verbena?
No.
All right. But that was it. So I felt like this was a good starting episode. All of the familiar faces were back. They didn't start off with a special guest or anything like that. We're starting to settle into the town.
Yeah, we're getting to know the town folk a lot more, Miss Beadle a lot more, the Olsons a lot more, in particular Nellie and Willie, who will figure pretty prominently here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was season 2, episode 1, The Richest Man in Walnut Grove. Join us next time for our next episode, which was, oh gosh, what was the name of it?
4 Eyes.
Oh, that's right. 4 Eyes. She says wearing glasses. I got 6 eyes because I got a cat's eyes looking at me now.
Yes.
You want to say goodbye, Nix? Okay. All right, everyone. Until next time.
See ya.
Check us out online at www.twokebonnets.com. Get your own bingo card. Shoot us an email to wokebonnets@gmail.com.
Yeah. And you can get you can email us for a sticker as well, or come up to us at an upcoming convention and we'll tell you all about it.
We'll tell you all about it. Okay, till next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Two Woke Bonnets. To find out more and to download your bingo card, visit twokebonnets.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe wherever fine video and audio podcasts are played.